Hi everyone, welcome to a tactics video. So this time I'm looking at how to use the two Sentinel units, being the Armored Sentinel and the Scout Sentinel in Warhammer 40,000 10th edition as at April of 2025. Just like my other tactics videos, I bring a relaxed but competitive approach, and I typically try to explain how to more actually use the unit as opposed to its data sheet. But in this video, I will look at its data sheets of the two units because they're obviously quite different. But again, I try to talk about what the unit does overall for you in the game and how you can effectively use it. So let's get straight into what this unit won't do and its negatives, and then we'll jump into its positives in a second. So the key thing with these two units is they won't do loads of damage. Yeah, they obviously have got some weaponry. They've got either a las cannon, hunter killer missile, one shot. They've got a plasma cannon, maybe they've got a chainsaw, but they largely won't do loads of damage compared to, say, a squad of Kazkin, Scion, 15-man Death Blob, or 11 Rust Battle Tank. This unit won't do tons of damage. Now, given they're a walker and they're a vehicle, they're not going to move through terrain, most terrain, particularly walls in competitive 40k. They will get movement blocked, and they also will cause a traffic jam in your deployment or just through mismanagement of your movement. So they've actually got quite a big base compared to 9th edition. They've got a bigger base. I can't tell you the exact size, but they're definitely quite a big base. And they do look awesome, and they're quite tall now, but they can get basically stuck. So you need to be very careful that you don't basically jam yourself up. And if your opponent's quite cunning, basically gets an early charge off, they could gum you up quite quickly. Given this model can't move through, obviously, terrain, has to move around terrain. Now, they won't survive concentrated damage. This is also a flip side on a positive, is they can survive a lot of low-level damage, but if your opponent points something serious at them, like, say, I don't know, a Demolisher Cannon, for example, or hit them with loads of high-impact melee attacks, they will kill these units. Now, a bit of a minor one is they will give up, bring it down, obviously, and also no prisoners, the secondary objectives. But that, again, I think within Astra Militarum, you're always going to give it, bring it down, and you're always going to give up no prisoners because typically you've got vehicles and you've got loads of squishy infantry supporting those vehicles, so you're probably going to always give it up, unfortunately. Now, they can no longer be taken in squads of 3. In the index, now in the codex, you could take units of 1, 2, or 3. Now it's just 1 or 2. And basically, I think in the previous iteration, a squad of 3 definitely had a lot of play. You could gum up your opponents because they're quite, as we go into the positives, deceptively survivable in the right scenarios. The off chance on that was obviously that they could, basically sometimes get movement stuck, like what I've spoken about here, because if you've got 3 of these dudes with massive bases, it can get quite hard to manage. But then, of course, if you've got 3 of them, you basically got more weaponry and they're more survivable. So let's then talk about the positives. What they will do is, on the flip side, they'll take a decent amount of damage. So even the Scout Sentinel and also the Armored Sentinel, they'll both take a deceptive amount of damage. And as we look at their data sheets, we'll be able to sort of talk about why. Now, the Scout Sentinel, not Sentinel, will buff your wider army. So the way to think about it is the Armored Sentinel basically is an independent unit. It basically acts on its own, versus the Scout Sentinel can actually buff the rest of your army, and I'll talk about why for its abilities in a second. Now, this is the only model or unit which has got the regiment and squadron keyword. So that actually is quite powerful for not only orders, but also some stratagems, I think, and also some detachments as well, which we're going to speak about now. So this is actually quite good. And there is a little bit of stratagem jiggery pokery you can do with this. It's only a little bit, but it is quite nice that they've got both keywords. So that means obviously infantry officers can give them orders and also tanks can give them orders as well, which is fantastic. Now, they're also directly supported by Combined Arms, Hammer of the Emperor, and the Recon Detachment. There could be some others I'm missing, but the reason why I say this is that obviously with Combined, they've got both the regiment and squadron keywords, so you get lethal hits into the right targets. Hammer of the Emperor buffs squadron units, so they could basically benefit from that. And then Recon Detachment also buffs walkers as well, which obviously the Sentinels have got. So that's good. They're directly supported by 3 detachments, and I could have missed one, so please tell me if I had. Now, as I spoke about with the car park, they can movement block very well. They've got a great big fat base, as I'm referencing here, and they can also be a very good screen. Given they've got quite far movement, we'll speak about in a second, and given their bases are quite big, it means you will actually be able to push this unit out quite far with move, with advanced rolls as well, you could push this thing all the way out to basically either screen your backfield or push out an early aggressive forward screen against your opponent. And as I said there, so the big base obviously is actually very good because compared to the old bases, I think it's probably like an inch bigger in totality. And again, this is the joke, every inch counts in 40K. And that means that you can get like orders further, you can buff things further, because every bit you've got that extra bit of space that you're reaching out from an order point of view, a range point of view, the Scout Sentinel's ability point of view, it means you actually have got further reach because the base is bigger. We're talking about an inch, but you know what I mean. Now, the Scout Sentinel is the cheapest non-character unit in the Codex. I think the cheapest model you can actually get, there's a 25-point Cyclops demolition vehicle, which is OC 0, so it can't really do much. But aside from I think the Commissar at 30 points, and then the Metastorm Priest, I think is 35 points, which is trash. The Scout Sentinel at 55 points is the cheapest actual non-character unit besides the Cyclops that can actually do stuff in the game. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. At 55 points, it's a great sort of unit to be sort of throwing around, and we'll talk about use in a second. Now, Tank Shock. I love Tank Shock. I always use it. At a toughness 7 for the Scout Sentinel, toughness 8 for the Armoured Sentinel, it's enough dice to basically think that Tank Shock, you're going to do a couple of mortal wounds. Obviously, compared to a Rogue Dawn at toughness 12, a toughness 7 or toughness 8 is less dice going into the Tank Shock roll, but it is better than, say, Tank Shocking, a bad example, I don't play Tower, but Tower Crisis suits, so it's only toughness 5 because you've got 5 dice versus 7 or 8. So that's the positives and negatives. And I would say 55 points to 65 points, they do feel effectively costed at the moment. They feel quite good value for points as at April of 2025. So let's look at the data sheets now to remind ourselves what we've got on offer here. So the Scout Sentinel, you can see, as said, it's 55 points. You can take squads of 1 and 2, no longer squads of 3, which is a shame. And it's got a 10-inch move, which is as far as a limitless battle tank, toughness 7, 3-up save, 7 wounds, leadership 7, and an OC2. The nice thing is it's just 777 to remember, which makes it easier. But the key thing with this is actually quite tanky, yeah? So if your opponent wants to actually remove this model, they're going to have to put some serious Daka into it or some serious melee into it. So if they just shit this thing with 16 bolter shots, or 16 close combat weapons from Space Marines at strength 4 AP 1, and even 1 damage, they're not guaranteed to kill this because obviously they're wounding on 5s. So they actually have to engage with this model with something quite aggressive, be it a tank poking its nose out or an angry melee unit going into it and chopping it to pieces. Now the weaponry, and the key thing is, as we flick over to the Armoured Sentinel in a second, is the weaponry choices are all the same. Now I would broadly say take whatever weapon you want. To be honest, because this model is not typically about doing damage. Now, I personally go for the las cannon because my kind of thinking is if it's going to hit once, it's going to then hopefully wound once, because obviously it's 12, AP3, D6 plus 1, is if that one shot goes through, it's going to do a good amount of damage. And a las cannon is probably the best there is to do that. But as I said, I mean, to be honest, take whatever you want. Probably avoid a multi-laser, that's trash, it's only got 4 shots. Flamer, that's fine. Auto cannon's also fine. Missile launch is kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. And a plasma cannon always is a nice choice because of the AP3 on the supercharge. It's also got a hunter killer missile, cool. And also a sentinel chainsaw as well, which is 3 attacks at 611, which is actually better than what you'd expect. Now, the good thing with the Scout Sentinel, another key one, is the Scout 9. This is a fantastic ability to have full stop. So obviously, Guard have got loads of Scout options. You've got lots of moves in Scout move, but Scout move 9 is obviously a much more aggressive Scout move and can definitely get you sort of pushing out early screens for turn 1 charges, which are popping up now, or turn 1 ingress or deep strike, which is popping up, and or basically pushing towards the center of the board or towards your objective you want to secure quite early. Now, the Scout Sentinel also has a very good ability. So at the start of your shooting phase, select an unit within 18 inches and visible to this unit. Until the end of the phase, each time a friendly Astra Militarum model makes an attack, reroll once to hit from ranged attacks. So a very good ability. The key thing is it buffs all models that look at it. It doesn't matter what that Astra Militarum model is. Could be a Rattling or a Bulgrim or a Baneblade. They're getting reroll once to hit. This obviously also affects indirect as well. And this is actually a detune versus the index rule, which basically removed all the modifiers to hit rolls for indirect until they changed that a bit. But even then, reroll ones to hit is a fantastic buff for guard. So outside of the bridgehead strike detachment and a couple of stratagems now sprinkled throughout the codex, there isn't a massive amount of reroll hits anymore. Scions lost those. So I think broadly speaking, this is actually quite a unique rule, reroll ones to hit. Again, there are some enhancements, there are some stratagems you can take. Bridgehead strike does it to all infantry, but outside of that, this is basically the main model which can do it. And unlike a enhancement you've got to pay for or a stratagem you've got to pay CFP for, this is always baked in. So Scout Sentinel, 55 points for 1, 110 points for 2, and a deceptively survivable unit, which basically busts the rest of your shooting army. Cool, now onto the Armoured Sentinel. You can see it loses 2 inches of movement. Its toughness 8, 2-up save, 7 wounds. Now, this is where the money's at. 2-up save is freaking awesome. A 2-up save basically means that even las cannons hit going to you, wounding on, and you're in cover, that you're saving on a 4-up. Even multi-melters, you're saving on a 5-up, which is not horrible. It's not great, but this model will hang around a lot longer than your opponent would like to admit. Again, if we just think about bolters or close combat spaceman weapons, they're wounding on 6s now versus 5 on the Scout Sentinel, and that means you have to put serious stuff into this model. You have to put serious stuff into it. Now, I didn't look at the keywords in the Scout Sentinel, but the key one to look at is obviously going to be the smoke keyword. So the smoke keyword is fantastic. It obviously means you can basically be -1 to hit and get the benefits of cover. And given this model has got both regiment and squadron, as I spoke about earlier, this means the synergies of, say, Ursula Creed. Given this model has got regiment, you could do smoke for free if it's within 12 inches of Ursula. So this is the great thing. Regiment and squadron on this data sheet means you can be buffed by several different units, obviously. Tank commanders, regular tank commanders, infantry officers such as Ursula Creed. Now, one to consider, and I don't think it's that much of an actual help, to be honest, is this here, Mobile Hunter Killers. So, each time this unit makes an attack against monsters or vehicles, you get to roll the wound roll. So that's nice. The main problem is, given you can only take 2 of these before you could take 3, as I spoke about in the index, is if you take 2 las cannons, you've got 2 las cannon shots, you've got 2 hunter killer missiles, you're going to make him hit on 3, it's great. You're going to probably land 2 or 3 hits of those, and then they're going to convert into wounds. Now, is this a unit you want to be relying on to do damage output? The answer is no. If you could take, bad example, 2 las cannons, 2 plasma cannons on either side, just pretend 2 auto cannons either side, that'd be super cool. Then yes, this would be a potentially a reliable unit which does damage. But given you're going to take 1 main weapon, a 1-shot hunter killer missile, and you've got 3 chainsword attacks, this model is not going to do much damage overall. Of course, you're going to plink off wounds. You may, 1-shot a tank, whatever it is. But broadly speaking, I don't think this rule actually does a lot for you. On account for, as I said, only 1 weapon, 1 main weapon, and given you can only take 2, I think if you could take 3 back in the index, definitely has merit. So obviously compared to the Armoured Sentinel, it's 2 inches slower, it's a pip of toughness higher, and that 2-up save. So you're going from a unit which, is buffing the rest of your army, it's survivable, to a unit that's very survivable and acts independently, just buffing itself, with the reroll wounds against monsters and vehicles. So that's the data sheets. I personally would lean towards more Scout Sentinels. That's my personal preference because they're dog poo-poo cheap. They're quite deceptively resilient. 10-inch move is great, and obviously the ability is very good there. So let's quickly talk about how I use these units. So for me, they're basically an early trade piece. What I mean by trade piece, we're getting all tactical here, so stick with me, but that's starting in, say, turns 1 and 2. You're not getting too aggressive depending on who you're playing into, and you need to chuck some units out to basically maybe secure an objective, contest an objective, push a screen out. And I'm touching on some other points, but let's pretend in turn 1, you get established locus, which has got to be close to the center. You get containment, you've got to push units out to do it on the side of the board, or you even get area denial, which is the center of the board. Or maybe you even get behind enemy lines and you want to get this unit out quite far. So would you be prepared to chuck out, say, 20 Kazkin, 20 Cadian with 130 points, a Lemon Rice tank 175 points, or would you want to chuck out a 55 point or 65 point Armoured Sentinel? And the answer is definitely chuck out a 55 point Scout Sentinel because it's very, very cheap. And as I said, it's a very good action monkey, given it's got the huge movement, be it 10 or 12 or 13 and 11 with orders, that can actually get out quite far to go and do that. And again, as you take casualties, and in my games, typically these models don't live beyond turn 3. If they do, I'm killing the game very well. Go Jeff. But you know, as you're taking more and more casualties, you don't want to be, say, again, doing containment with a Lemon Rice battle tank. You want to be doing it with a Scout Sentinel. And I think that the key good thing about the Scout Sentinel is it can still do its action, obviously, and buff the rest of its army. So it can do an action, and it can still look at a unit and go, reroll wants to hit on that unit. Versus the Armoured Sentinel, if it's doing an action, it's not really wound rolls because obviously it can't shoot. You get that, yeah? Then aggressive screening or screening in general. Again, you know, you don't want to be screening, or of course you can screen with larger, more expensive units, but you don't want to be sort of plonking, you know, a Lemon Rice battle tank in a corner of the board just to screen, and he can't shoot. Bad example. You want to do it with a Scout Sentinel. Likewise, if you have to do aggressive forward screening, because your opponent's got some super nasty stuff in Deep Strike and they're going to rapid ingress, again, you push out a Scout Sentinel. It's got a massive big movement. You could roll an advanced move. Suddenly you've got plus move, 16 inches of movement. In some of the detachments, it can move through terrain in Hammer of the Emperor. But even then, 16-inch movement you can get on most terrain. And given it's got a nice big fat base, it's going to be pushing out any rapid ingress or deep strike threats out by 9 inches back. So that's always very good. Now, as said, it's actually got quite a big base now. It's going to be great to movement block other vehicles and monsters which can't move terrain. But even then, it can positionally effectively movement block infantry. So given the base is so bloody big, they're going to have to go around the model. And if you are, for whatever reason, you do want to take 2 of them, that is a fantastically big, basically movement block. You've got these massive big bases that basically block out anything they can get through that, yeah? And again, would you want to be doing this with a Lemon Rice battle tank, or would you want to be doing it with an Armoured Sentinel? And the armor is Armoured Sentinel. Now the other, and I'm going to stick on this point because movement blocking is something I often do with just infantry. Now, I would say, of course, depending on the matchup, you probably would place more value on a battle line unit of 10 dudes at 65 points than a Scout Sentinel. So again, 55 points for the Scout Sentinel, for me, it's a great model to just chuck out there, stand in between 2 terrain pieces, say, hi, big scary demon prince, you can't move through me because I'm stood in the way and I'm quite a big base, versus some infantry dudes. Now this one, you need to do some quick Mathammer and simply ask your opponent. And what I mean by this is you can gum up other vehicles or monsters or units with limited melee output. So there will be scenarios where you want to basically charge this model into your opponent, because then you control where the model moves. If it can't fall back and shoot, it can't do actions. If it can't fall back, shoot, or charge, it can't do either of those. And even if you're charging, say, a transport, which has got dudes inside, if you charge a transport, you're controlling where they disembark from that model. Now, you need to choose the right scenarios. So if you were to charge a knight, which is another vehicle, that's probably a bad choice, because a big knight would chop a sentinel in half. But if you charged a land raider, which is up against terrain, you charge into it through terrain, it can't shoot you, that's a fantastic scenario. You're charging other transports, they broadly probably can't do much shooting in combat, and if you're shooting a model which has got all blast weaponry, they can't shoot you in combat. So you're basically controlling what that model does. Likewise, you want to be, you could be looking for scenarios to charge into infantry. Now, of course, this is when you simply have to ask your opponent, honestly, could this bunch of dudes kill this model in combat, in melee? And they're going to know. They're going to go, okay, it's got, it's toughness 7, 7 wounds, throw up save. I've got 16 close combat attacks from my Space Marines with AP1. I'm not going to kill it. Versus, say, if you're charging into some Sanguinary Guard from Blood Angels, the answer is yes, they could kill it. So you need to choose when that is going to make sense. And I'm not saying you should be charging this model every single turn, but sometimes there are opportunities to remove a unit from your opponent's army by simply just choosing what they do for them, which is basically charging into them. And again, if they've got fallback and charge, if they've got fallback and shoot, then don't do it. And then, as said, I think the Scout Sentinel, personally, I'm seeing quite a good bit of value out of it at the moment because I play combined arms. I've got pretty much no access to any rerolls to hit anymore. And the Scout Sentinel reroll ones to hit is obviously a good force multiplier because if you've got several tanks hitting on 3s, some hitting on 4s, real ones to hit is enough math to basically push you back up to actually, if you're hitting on 3s, reroll 1s, you're actually hitting on a 2.5. And likewise, if you're hitting on a 4, you're hitting on a 3.5. Given you're hitting on 4s, reroll some, it makes it a bit better. So yeah, that's it. I think a shorter one this time. I typically go for about, this is only 20 minutes, blimey. Hopefully interesting to hear my take on this unit. I think it's a really good unit. I think the Scout Sentinel is the pick of the bunch, simply because it's cheaper, it moves further, and it buffs the rest of your army. The Armoured Sentinel definitely has merit. I've seen it pop up a little bit in winning tournament lists in Hammer of the Emperor, because obviously it can move through terrain, it can auto-advance 6 because it's got Squadron, and then basically be super annoying and just stand there and get in the way. So how do you use the Scout Sentinel and Armoured Sentinel? Love to hear from you. What have I missed? What have I got wrong? Please tell me. I always look at the comments. I try to always leave like a YouTube love heart thing on your comment because I've seen it. And likewise, if you've got any feedback or criticism, I'm always happy to hear it as well because it's all about improving how I deliver my content and how I play 40k. So yeah, let me know what you think of this topic, how effectively you use this unit, and just general any other feedback as well. So cool, if you enjoyed the video and want to support me, you can do so with a like, comment, or by subscribing, becoming a channel member, or becoming a Patreon Platoon member. You get a little miniature assigned to you and feature in the roll call at the end of each of my videos. Or you can simply watch my other videos. I've got everything from tactics like this, where I bring a relaxed but competitive approach to 40k, painting, assembling, and kit pashing and painting videos, and likewise lore as well. I've drawn my experience from the Australian Army many years ago to bring a different perspective on 40k lore. Or you could buy some channel dice. I've made some lovely channel dice produced in the US by Dice Baron. You basically look in the description below, send me an email, work out shipping, and I'll send them over to you wherever in the world. So super thanks to all my supporters. It really keeps me motivated to make more videos. So keep your bayonet sharp, lascar oiled. Favour from the Emperor strong. Patreon Platoon, sound off. Tank Commander Glenn. Tank Commander Mitchell. Tank Commander Watchdog Van Etten. Lieutenant Burke Nielsen, Lieutenant Smith, Colour Sergeant DuPont, Sergeants Adal, Scott, the Colonel Merrill, Veterans Gibson, Hall, Lundeen, Guardsman Beard, Coquelin, Easingwood, Hills, Lyons, Malik, Nitton, Medicae Rolfe, Tontkin, Conscripts England, Evan Gunn, Goodwin, Honorary Members Balgrim King, Syker Smith, Cyan Gaylard, Aquilon Nassim.